The pack would remember that night as the one when the moon betrayed them. When Alara Wynn stood before the claiming altar, her heart open and trembling like a wounded bird, she believed in promises. She had worn her faith like armor, that her wolf would come, that the man she loved would keep his word, that the moon goddess would not abandon her child. But faith is fragile against the weight of ambition, and love even more so against the current of power. When Alpha Kale Thorn turned his back on her, every eye in the Blackclaw pack witnessed her humiliation bloom like a dark flower. His voice, once warm with whispered devotions, turned cold as the winter wind. The pack must come first. I cannot bind myself to weakness. The great hall fell silent, save for the soft patter of tears on ceremonial silk. Alara fled into the night, her white gown trailing behind her like the ghost of everything she had lost. The ancient Darkwood opened its arms to her, the forbidden forest where wolves went to die, where legends were born, where magic older than pack law still whispered in the shadows. No one expected to see her again. No one could have imagined what the forest would make of a broken girl with an unawakened wolf, or how rejection's bitter seed might grow into power. No one dreamed that when the blood moon rose 5 years later, she would return, not as the timid, defective mate they had cast aside, but as something more terrible and beautiful than any Luna who had come before. In the space between betrayal and vengeance lies transformation. In the quiet moments between heartbeats, destinies are rewritten, and in the darkest corners of the forest, even the moon goddess can change her mind. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day, a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. The night of Alara Wynn's claiming ceremony should have been bathed in moonlight. Instead, storm clouds gathered above Blackclaw territory, as if the moon goddess herself turned away from the celebration. Alara stood before the mirror in the Luna's preparation chamber, her fingers trembling as they traced the silver embroidery on her ceremonial gown. White fabric cascaded to the floor like frozen waterfall, the ancestral symbols of the pack stitched with painstaking precision around the hem. The dress had been worn by every Luna of the Blackclaw pack for 7 generations. Tonight, it should have marked her transformation from the Alpha's promised mate to his Luna, bound in body, spirit, and soul. "It will happen," she whispered to herself, pressing a hand against her chest where her wolf should stir. "She'll come. She has to." For 21 years, Alara had waited for her wolf to surface. Most shifters manifested at 16, some as late as 18. At 21, she was an anomaly, promised to Alpha Kale since childhood, yet unable to complete the transformation that would cement their bond. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The door opened to reveal Kale's sister, Lena, her usually warm face tight with concern. "The elders are getting restless," Lena said, her eyes drifting to the window where lightning split the darkening sky. "The storm's growing worse. They think it's an omen," Alara said flatly, not a question. Lena stepped closer, taking Alara's hands in hers. "My brother loves you. Remember that, no matter what happens tonight." But there was something in Lena's voice, a hollowness, a hesitation, that made Alara's stomach twist. She'd seen how Kale looked at the she-wolf who'd arrived from the northern pack 3 months ago. She'd noticed the way his gaze lingered on Lyra's golden hair, her confident stride, her powerful wolf form. "They're saying my wolf won't come because I'm defective," Alara said, forcing the words past the tightness in her throat. "That the moon goddess never intended me to be Luna." "Don't listen to them." Lena squeezed her hands. "Come, it's time." The great hall of the Blackclaw pack had been transformed for the ceremony. Hundreds of candles illuminated the stone walls, casting dancing shadows across the faces of pack members gathered in concentric circles. At the center stood a raised platform with the ceremonial altar, a slab of ancient granite carved with the pack's history. Alara felt their eyes on her as she walked the path to the altar. Some sympathetic, most curious, a few openly hostile. She kept her chin high, focusing on Kale's tall figure waiting at the platform. His broad shoulders were draped in the ceremonial fur of his ancestors, his dark hair pulled back to reveal the sharp angles of his face. When their eyes met, Alara expected to find reassurance. Instead, she saw resignation. Her steps faltered. Alpha Marcus, Kale's father and pack leader, stood beside the altar, his weathered face impassive as Alara approached. Beside him, the pack's elder council, 7 men and women whose lineage traced back to the pack's founding. watched with calculating eyes. Tonight, under the witness of the moon goddess, Marcus began, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. We gather to bind Alpha heir Cale Thorne to his chosen mate, Ilara Wynn, in preparation for their ascension. Thunder crashed outside, making the candles flicker. Someone in the crowd murmured about bad omens. Ilara Wynn, step forward and present your wolf to be recognized by your mate and your pack. This was the moment. Ilara closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself to the place where her wolf should dwell. For years she'd felt something there. A presence, a whisper, a shadow. But never the roar, the heat, the primal force that would bring her other half to the surface. Please, she begged silently. Please come now. I need you. The hall fell silent. Seconds stretched into a minute, then 2. Sweat beaded on Ilara's forehead as she strained, searching the darkness inside her for any flicker of response. Nothing. She opened her eyes to find the hall watching her with a mixture of pity and disdain. Elder Greta, the oldest of the council, stepped forward with a sneer twisting her thin lips. The moon goddess has spoken. The girl is defective, her blood too weak to manifest. She cannot be Luna. Greta turned to Cale. Alpha heir, you are released from this bond. The pack requires strength, not deficiency. No, Ilara whispered, her voice breaking. She turned to Cale, reaching for his hand. Cale, please. We've known each other since we were children. You know me, wolf or not. For a heartbeat, something flickered in his eyes. Pain, regret, perhaps even love. But then his gaze hardened, and he stepped back. The pack must come first, he said, his voice controlled yet distant. I cannot bind myself to weakness. The words hit her like physical blows. The hall began to spin, faces blurring together as humiliation and grief crashed over her. You promised, she whispered, too quietly for anyone but him to hear. You said it didn't matter. Cale's jaw tightened. I was wrong. Elder Greta's voice cut through Ilara's shock. The Northern Pack's daughter, Lyra, has expressed willingness to be considered as mate. Her lineage is strong, her wolf powerful. A murmur rippled through the hall. Ilara watched, frozen, as Lyra stepped forward from the crowd, golden hair cascading over her shoulders, confidence radiating from every line of her body. Their eyes met for a brief moment, Lyra's gaze not gloating, but calm and certain, as if this outcome had been inevitable. Perhaps it had been. No, Ilara breathed, backing away from the altar. No, this isn't happening. But it was. Already the pack was shifting, turning toward their future Luna, the defective mate forgotten. Cale didn't even look at her, his attention fixed on Lyra as she approached. Something broke inside Ilara then, not just her heart, but something deeper, more fundamental. The world narrowed to a pinprick of pain, then expanded into blinding clarity. Without a word, she turned and fled the hall, tearing through the heavy doors and into the storm. Rain lashed at her ceremonial gown as she ran, soaking the delicate fabric until it clung to her like a shroud. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the path toward the forest that bordered Blackclaw territory, the ancient woodland that all pack members were forbidden to enter, the Darkwood, place of legends and nightmares, where lost wolves went to die. Ilara didn't slow as she approached the tree line. Behind her she could hear shouts, someone calling her name, Lena, perhaps, or one of the few friends who might care that she'd disappeared into the night. Not Cale. Never again Cale. The first step past the tree line felt like crossing a threshold into another world. The sounds of the packlands faded, replaced by the whisper of ancient leaves. The rain seemed to pause mid-air, droplets suspended as if time itself hesitated. Let me in, Ilara whispered to the darkness between the trees. I have nowhere else to go. The forest seemed to exhale, branches bending inward as if in welcome. Ilara took another step, then another, the white gown now stained with mud and rain trailing behind her like a broken promise. She didn't look back as the shadows of the Darkwood enveloped her, swallowing her whole. 5 years passed. Cale stood at the edge of the Darkwood, staring into the impenetrable gloom beneath branches that had never known the touch of an axe. The forest had stood since before the first wolf shifters claimed these territories, ancient and unknowable. You shouldn't be here, Alpha, said Brennan, his beta and childhood friend. The Border Patrol can handle the disturbances. Cale's jaw tightened. 3 pack members missing in 2 months. All vanished near this section of the forest. That's not a coincidence. He didn't mention the dreams that had haunted him for weeks. Visions of white fabric stained with mud, of green eyes hardening with betrayal, of Alara, walking into these same woods, never to be seen again. 5 years since the claiming ceremony. 5 years of leading the Blackclaw pack alongside Lyra, his Luna. Capable, strong, respected. 5 years of prosperity and strength. 5 years of a hollow ache behind his ribs that never eased. The council wants to send a hunting party into the Darkwood, Brennan said, his voice low. They think whatever's taking our people is hiding within. No one enters the forest, Cale growled. The ancient pacts are clear. Brennan's eyebrows rose. You believe the old tales? That the forest is alive? Cale didn't answer. Instead, he knelt at the tree line, pressing his palm against the earth where moss grew thick and soft. Something pulsed beneath his hand. A heartbeat, a whisper, a warning. A branch snapped deeper in the forest, the sound unnaturally loud in the stillness. Both men froze, their wolves rising close to the surface in response to potential threat. Something's watching us, Brennan whispered. Cale lifted his head, scenting the air. Petrichor, loam, decaying leaves, and something else. Something familiar that made his heart stutter. Impossible, he breathed. From between 2 ancient oaks stepped a wolf, its fur so white it seemed to glow in the forest's gloom. Larger than any wolf Kyle had seen, it moved with impossible grace. Green eyes fixed on him with unnerving intelligence. Moon goddess, Brennan gasped, falling to one knee. The white wolf's lips pulled back, revealing teeth sharp as daggers. But it wasn't growling at them. It was smiling, and then it was gone, melting back into the shadows as if it had never been there at all. Only the lingering scent remained, wild and fierce, yet underneath, something that made Cale's chest constrict with recognition and impossible hope. Alara? The forest offered no answer, but as night fell across Blackclaw territory, whispers spread from wolf to wolf, of a queen who walked the Darkwood, of a Luna who commanded the trees themselves, of a wolf maiden with eyes like spring and fur like moonlight. The forest had claimed her, they said, and soon she would claim them all. The Alpha Council chamber fell silent as Cale finished speaking. 7 pack leaders from across the territory sat around the ancient oak table, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outright scorn. A white wolf in the Darkwood? Alpha Regina of the Silver Lake Pack scoffed, tossing her dark braid over her shoulder. And you believe this is your rejected mate, risen from the dead? I never said she was dead, Cale replied, his voice even despite the anger simmering beneath. No body was ever found. Because the forest consumed her, drawled Alpha Thorn, the oldest among them. His weathered face creased into a condescending smile. As it has consumed every fool who ventures past its borders. Cale's fingers dug into his palms, claws threatening to emerge. 5 years as Alpha, and still these elder wolves treated him like a pup chasing shadows. 4 more disappearances since we last met, he countered, all from border territories, all leaving nothing but a scent trail leading directly into the Darkwood. He leaned forward. This isn't just about Alara. Something is happening in that forest, and it concerns all of us. Luna Lyra placed a hand on his arm, her touch meant to appear supportive to the council while her fingers pressed in warning. Control yourself, the pressure said. Remember your position. The border territories have always faced challenges, said Alpha Marrow, choosing his words carefully. But venturing into the Darkwood violates the ancient pact. No wolf may enter. No tree may fall. Those boundaries have kept peace for generations. Peace? Cale's laugh was sharp. People are vanishing, Marrow. What peace is that? The chamber doors swung open before anyone could respond. A young scout rushed in, her clothing soaked with sweat, her eyes wild with urgency. Forgive the interruption, Alphas, she gasped, dropping into a hasty bow. But there's someone, at the main gates. They're demanding to see the council. We're in session, Regina snapped. Whatever border dispute or hunting claim it is, can wait until... It's not a dispute, the scout interrupted, earning shocked looks from the assembled leaders. No one interrupted an Alpha. They say they're from the Darkwood, a delegation. The chamber erupted into chaos, voices rising in disbelief, questions hurled across the table. chairs scraping back as several alphas rose to their feet, but Cale heard none of it. A roaring filled his ears as blood rushed to his head, his wolf surging close to the surface with a yearning so intense it felt like physical pain. "Bring them in," he commanded, his alpha voice cutting through the clamor. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. "You overstep, Blackclaw," Regina warned. "This is a council decision, not— Bring them in." Each word vibrated with power, Cale's eyes flashing gold as his wolf pushed forward. The scout hesitated only a moment before bowing again and disappearing through the doors. The minutes that followed stretched like hours, tension thickening the air until it felt difficult to breathe. When the doors finally opened again, even Cale wasn't prepared for what entered. 3 figures stepped into the chamber, their presence immediately commanding attention. But it was the woman at their center who drew every eye. Alara. Yet not Alara, not the shy, hopeful girl who had fled into the forest 5 years ago. This woman stood tall, her posture regal, her green eyes surveying the room with cool detachment. Gone was the ceremonial white gown, replaced by garments that seemed to have been crafted from the forest itself. Leather the color of rich earth, fabric woven with patterns that seemed to shift when you looked directly at them, and draped over her shoulders, a cloak of pure white fur. Her hair, once honey brown and carefully tamed, now flowed wild around her shoulders in waves of deep auburn, streaked with strands as white as her cloak. But most shocking of all was the aura that surrounded her, a tangible power that filled the room, pressing against the skin like the air before a storm. Beside her stood 2 figures no less remarkable, a man with skin dark as polished walnut, his eyes an impossible shade of amber that seemed to hold no pupil, and a woman whose age was impossible to determine, her silver hair braided with feathers and bones, her face bearing tattoos in patterns no pack recognized. "Alara," Cale breathed, the name escaping before he could stop it. Her eyes flicked to him, a brief acknowledgement before returning to sweep across the assembled council. "I am called Alariel now," she said, her voice melodious, yet carrying an undertone like distant thunder. "Voice of the Darkwood, guardian of the ancient pact." She inclined her head, not in submission, but in the manner of one equal addressing another. "I come with warning and proposal." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Alpha Thorn cleared his throat. "The Pacts do not recognize the authority of the Darkwood," he said, though his usual confidence seemed diminished in her presence. "You trespass on council ground," the silver-haired woman beside Alariel hissed, the sound more serpent than wolf. "The forest stood before your packs were born, old one. Its roots reach deeper than your bloodlines." "Peace, Morna," Alariel said, placing a hand on her companion's arm. Her eyes, when they returned to the council, held a cold amusement. "You speak of trespass, Alpha Thorn. When your hunters leave offerings at the edge of my woods to beg safe passage for their prey." Thorn's face flushed, his mouth opening and closing without sound. "You said you came with warning," Cale interjected, struggling to reconcile this commanding presence with the woman he had once promised to cherish. "What threatens the Pacts?" Ilariel's gaze lingered on him, something indefinable flickering in its depths. "The balance has shifted," she said, addressing the entire council once more. "The veil between worlds grows thin. Ancient things stir in the darkness beyond the Darkwood, things that hunger for the power of pack bonds, for the strength of shifted flesh. Riddles and superstitions," Regina scoffed, though her knuckles had whitened where she gripped the edge of the table. "The missing wolves," Kyle said, realization dawning. "They weren't taken by the forest." Ilariel nodded, a single sharp movement. "They sought shelter within our borders, fleeing what pursues them, what pursues us all." "And what is that, exactly?" Lyra spoke for the first time, her voice carefully neutral, though her eyes glittered with suspicion. "The old ones called them hollow walkers," said the amber-eyed man beside Ilariel, his deep voice resonating with a faint echo. "Creatures born of shadow and hunger, neither living nor dead. They feed on essence, the spark that separates a shifter from a mere beast." A shudder passed through the council. Every pack had legends of such beings, stories told to frighten pups into obedience, tales of wolves drained of their shifting ability, left as empty husks. "We've seen no evidence of these." "Hollow walkers," said Alpha Marrow, though uncertainty had crept into his tone. "Then you haven't been looking." Ilariel replied. 3 nights ago, a patrol from the Riverbend pack was ambushed near the northern ridge. Only one survived, making it to our borders before collapsing. He spoke of shadows that moved against the wind, of cold that burned, of packmates whose eyes went blank even as they continued to fight. Cale exchanged a glance with Brennan, who stood guard near the chamber doors. The beta gave a subtle nod. He would verify the claim immediately. If what you say is true, Regina said slowly, why come to us? The Darkwood has remained separate from pack affairs for generations, because the Hollow Walkers do not distinguish between forest dweller and pack wolf, Ilariel said simply, and because the ancient pact works both ways. We have sheltered your lost, healed your wounded, respected your boundaries. Now we ask for alliance. Alliance? Thorn's voice cracked with disbelief. With the forest? With those who dwell within it, corrected the amber-eyed man. The Darkwood has guardians older than your oldest lore, Ilariel added, but even they cannot stand alone against what comes. We need the strength of the packs, your numbers, your territories, your bonds, and you need our knowledge, our magics, our sanctuary. Silence fell over the chamber as the implications settled. An alliance with the Darkwood would upend generations of tradition, of careful separation between packlands and the ancient forest. And if we refuse? Asked Marrow, his tone making it clear he already anticipated the answer. Ilariel's smile was cold as midwinter. Then you will face the Hollow Walkers alone, while we retreat to the heart of the forest where even they fear to tread. She paused, her eyes sweeping the council once more. Choose wisely, Alphas. The next moon brings the blood moon, when the veil is thinnest, when their power is strongest. The blood moon is 2 weeks away, Cale said, mental calculations racing. Not enough time to prepare, to coordinate between packs. Then I suggest you start immediately, Ilariel replied. She turned as if to leave, then paused, glancing back over her shoulder. A delegation from each pack should come to the edge of the Darkwood at sunset tomorrow. We will discuss terms. Without waiting for response or dismissal, she and her companions turned and strode from the chamber. The doors swung shut behind them with a finality that rang like judgment. In the silence that followed, Cale found himself unable to move, unable to process all that had happened. Ilara, Ilariel, alive, changed, powerful, and now offering an alliance that could save them all, or lead them into deeper peril. Well, said Thorn finally, his voice laden with sarcasm, your lost Luna has certainly found herself. Cale's growl silenced him. This isn't about Ilara. This is about the survival of all packs. Is it? Lyra's voice was soft, her blue eyes fixed on him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Are you certain this isn't about redemption, Cale? About assuaging your guilt? Before he could answer, Regina slammed her palm against the table. Enough. We need to verify these claims before making any decisions. If these Hollow Walkers exist, if our people are truly in danger, then we must consider all options, even alliance with the forest dwellers. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Kyle nodded, grateful for Regina's pragmatism, though his thoughts remained tangled around the woman who had walked out of his nightmares and into reality. As the council dissolved into planning and arguments, he slipped away to the balcony overlooking the main courtyard. In the distance, he could just make out 3 figures moving toward the main gates, one cloaked in white fur that seemed to capture and reflect the fading sunlight. What happened to you in there? He whispered, though he knew she was too far to hear. But as if in answer, Ilariel paused at the threshold of the gates. She turned, looking back toward the council building, her gaze unerringly finding him across the distance. For one heartbeat, something shifted in her expression, a flicker of the girl she had been, perhaps, or simply a moment of recognition. Then she was gone, melting into the gathering dusk like a dream. The delegation that assembled at the edge of the Darkwood the following evening was smaller than Cale had hoped. Only 4 of the 7 pack leaders had agreed to come. Himself, Regina, Marrow, and to everyone's surprise, Ancient Thorn, who claimed he wouldn't miss this folly for all the prey in the territory. Lyra had argued fiercely against Cale's attendance. You're playing directly into her hands, his Luna had hissed as he prepared to leave. This could be an elaborate trap, a revenge plot years in the making. I saw her eyes, Lyra. This isn't about revenge. No? Then what changed her? What gave her the wolf she never had? What transformed the weak girl who ran crying into the forest into Whatever she is now. Lyra stepped closer, her voice dropping. The Alara you knew is gone, Kyle. Don't forget that. Her words echoed in his mind now as he stood at the forest's edge, watching the shadows deepen between ancient trunks. Brennan stood at his right shoulder, alert and wary. Regina and her beta positioned themselves nearby, with Marrow and Thorn slightly behind. She's late, Thorn muttered. Disrespectful. The forest keeps its own time, said a voice from the shadows, causing all 6 wolves to startle. The amber-eyed man from the council chamber stepped from between 2 massive oaks, seemingly appearing from thin air. Up close, his strange eyes were even more unsettling, the color of burning honey, with no discernible pupil or white. I am Caney, he said, inclining his head. The Guardian welcomes you to the boundary. Follow, and do not stray from the path. We were told we would meet at the edge, Regina said sharply. Not enter the forest itself. Caney's expression remained impassive. The boundary is not a line, Alpha, but a transition. We ask you to take 20 steps, no more. The Guardian awaits. The pack leaders exchanged uneasy glances. To enter the Darkwood, even by a few steps, was to break a taboo as old as their societies. I'll go first, Cale said, squaring his shoulders. Without waiting for agreement, he stepped forward, crossing the invisible line that had separated packlands from forest for generations. The air changed immediately, becoming thicker, heavier with scents he couldn't identify. The sounds of the outside world dampened, replaced by a deep silence that seemed to press against his ears. Beside him, Brennan's breathing quickened, his wolf clearly agitated by the sudden shift. Keep counting, Cale murmured. Behind them, he could hear the others following, their footsteps hesitant. At precisely 20 steps, they entered a clearing that shouldn't have been possible. The ancient trees formed a perfect circle around a space perhaps 30 paces across. At its center burned a fire unlike any Cale had seen, flames that shifted between blue, green, and white, casting eerie shadows across the clearing. Seated on a throne of living wood, branches and roots that seemed to grow and twist even as they watched, was Alariel. Tonight, her cloak was drawn back to reveal a dress of deepest green, adorned with symbols that made the eye ache if observed too long. The silver-haired woman, Morna, stood at her right. At her left was a young boy whose features seemed to shift and change in the strange firelight. Welcome to the Heart Between, Alariel said, her voice carrying clearly despite the fire's crackling. Few pack wolves have stood where you stand now and lived to return home. Is that a threat? Regina asked, her hand moving instinctively toward the knife at her belt. A fact, Alariel replied calmly. The forest protects its own. That you stand here unharmed is testament to our sincerity. She rose from her throne, the wood seeming to withdraw as she did, sinking back into the earth. I have shown you respect by inviting you to neutral ground. Will you show the same by accepting guest right at our fire? Guest right was an ancient custom, older even than the pack laws, a sacred agreement that neither host nor guest would harm the other while sharing fire and food. Kyle stepped forward. We accept guest right, Guardian, and we come prepared to discuss terms of alliance. Something flickered in Alariel's eyes. Approval, perhaps. She gestured to the fire where logs had appeared as seats. Then let us speak plainly, she said as they settled around the flames. The Hollow Walkers grow stronger with each passing day. Already they test the boundaries of the Darkwood, seeking weaknesses. Soon they will turn their attention to your territories. You spoke of evidence, Marrow said. My beta found nothing to confirm your tale of an attack on Riverbend Pack. Because there is no Riverbend Pack anymore, said the boy at Alariel's side, his voice strangely adult. They were the first to fall. 53 wolves, all gone in a single night. A chill ran down Cale's spine. The Riverbend Pack was small, isolated, but 53 souls couldn't simply vanish without word reaching the council. That's impossible, Thorn scoffed. We would have heard. Would you? Alariel interrupted. When was the last time any of you personally visited Riverbend? When was the last messenger from their alpha? The silence that followed was damning. Pack territories were vast, communication often slow. It could be months between formal contact. If what you say is true, Regina said slowly, we need more than words. Show us. Alariel nodded, as if she had anticipated the demand. She rose, moving to the fire. From a pouch at her waist, she withdrew a handful of powder that she cast into the flames, causing them to flare brilliant silver. "Behold what was, and what may be," she said, her voice taking on a resonant quality that seemed to vibrate in Cale's bones. The flames twisted, forming shapes. A village, wolves running in panic, shadows moving against all natural law. Cale watched in growing horror as the shadows engulfed wolf after wolf. Some victims simply collapsed, eyes vacant, bodies still breathing but somehow empty. Others transformed, their features twisting into something no longer wolf, but not fully shadow either. Creatures that turned on their own packmates with terrible purpose. "Enough!" Marrow gasped, as the vision showed a child cornered by what had once been her parents. The flames died down, returning to their previous state. Ilariel's face was grave, her eyes reflecting firelight. "This is what comes for all of us," she said quietly, "unless we stand united." Cale forced himself to breathe through the nausea rising in his throat. "What do you propose?" "The 7 territories must become one," Ilariel said. "A unified front, with the Darkwood at its center. The forest's magic can shield us, but only if the boundaries between our realms thin. The ancient pacts must be rewritten." "Unify the pacts?" Thorn's incredulous voice rose. "Impossible. Centuries of tradition, of bloodlines, of—" "Tradition won't save your people when the Hollow Walkers come," Ilariel cut in, her voice sharp. "Pride won't shield your pups. The old ways brought us here, separated, vulnerable. We must forge new paths. Under whose leadership?" Regina asked, ever practical. 7 alphas cannot share a single territory without bloodshed." Ilariel's gaze swept the circle, pausing briefly on each alpha before settling on Kyle. Something in that look made his wolf surge forward, responding to a call he couldn't articulate. "Leadership will be determined by trial during the blood moon," she said. "The strongest alpha, the strongest Luna, proven through ancient rites. The forest will recognize them, and so must you all." "And if we refuse?" Thorn demanded, rising to his feet. "If we reject this dismantling of everything our ancestors built?" Ilariel's expression hardened. "Then you condemn your people to the fate you just witnessed. The Hollow Walkers cannot be fought by tooth and claw alone. They feed on division, on isolation. United, with the forest's power, we stand a chance. Divided, we all fall." The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of choice. Kyle found himself staring into the strange fire, seeing again the visions of devastation. Could it truly be as dire as she claimed? Or was this, as Lyra suggested, an elaborate scheme? He looked up, finding Ilariel watching him. In that moment, something passed between them, a current of understanding that transcended words. "I will stand with the forest," he said, rising to his feet. "Blackclaw Pack pledges itself to this alliance." Regina followed suit after a moment's hesitation. "Silver Lake stands with Blackclaw." Marrow nodded grimly. "Stonecrest will not abandon its allies." All eyes turned to Thorn, who remained seated, his weathered face contorted with emotion. "You ask us to throw away generations of law and custom on the word of a failed Luna and her forest freaks," he spat. Ilariel didn't flinch at the insult. Instead, she moved toward him with fluid grace, kneeling before the ancient Alpha until their eyes were level. "I ask you to save your people, Alpha Thorn," she said softly, "as you have always done, through war and famine and strife. One more time, old wolf. One more change to secure their future." Something in her words seemed to reach him. His shoulders slumped, age suddenly visible in every line of his body. "Redclaw stands with the Alliance," he muttered, not meeting her eyes. "But if this is deception, Forest Walker, not even your trees will hide you from my wrath." Ilariel inclined her head in acknowledgement before rising. "Then it is settled. Return to your territories. Prepare your people. When the blood moon rises, bring them to the great clearing beyond the western edge of the Darkwood. There, we will formalize our alliance and determine who shall lead us into the coming storm." As the meeting concluded and the pack leaders prepared to depart, Cale found himself lingering, unable to leave without speaking to her directly. "Ilariel," he said as the others followed Caney back toward the forest's edge. She turned, her expression guarded. "Alpha Blackclaw, may we speak? Alone?" For a moment, he thought she would refuse. Then she nodded once, dismissing her companions with a gesture. The silver-haired woman hesitated, casting a warning look at Kyle before following the others into the trees. When they were alone, silence stretched between them. 5 years of absence, of change, of pain, distilled into a single impossible moment. "You found your wolf," Kale said finally, the words inadequate, but all he could manage. "The forest found me," she corrected, her voice softer than it had been during the council. "When I had nothing left, when I had been cast aside by all I loved, the Darkwood offered what the Pax would not, acceptance without condition." The accusation in her words stung, but Kale couldn't deny its truth. "I was wrong," he said simply. "What I did that night, there is no justification." "No," she agreed. "There isn't." Another silence, heavier than the first. "Is this real?" he asked finally. "The threat, the Hollow Walkers, is it as dire as you claim?" "It's worse," she said, and for the first time, he glimpsed fear behind her composed exterior. "What I showed you was only the beginning. They grow stronger with each soul they take. More cunning, more numerous." Kale stepped closer, drawn by an impulse he couldn't name. "And this alliance? Is it truly about survival? Or is there more?" Ilariel's eyes flashed, a hint of wolf gold momentarily eclipsing their green. "Do you think I orchestrated this? Created an imaginary threat to, what, extract revenge? Force you to bow before the mate you rejected?" "No," he said quickly. "But Lyra thinks—" "I don't care what your Luna thinks," Ilariel snapped, her composure cracking. "I don't care about either of you, beyond your usefulness in the coming war." The words hit their mark, though Kale suspected they weren't entirely true. Not when he could scent the complex emotions rolling off her. Anger, yes, but also pain, regret, and something deeper he couldn't name. "I understand," he said, stepping back. "For what it's worth, I am sorry, Alara. For everything." She stilled at the use of her old name, her expression flickering between fury and something that might have been grief. "Alara died the night you rejected her," she said finally, her voice steady once more. "She walked into the Darkwood and never walked out. Remember that, Alpha, when you look at me and see ghosts of the past." With that, she turned and walked away, her cloak of white fur gleaming in the strange firelight, until she vanished into the shadows of the forest that had claimed her, the forest that had transformed the broken girl he had betrayed into a queen who might save them all, or lead them to destruction. The 2 weeks before the blood moon passed in frenzied preparation across the territories. Messengers raced between packlands, hunting parties worked double shifts, and warriors trained day and night against an enemy conventional fighting might not defeat. In Blackclaw territory, tension mounted like a gathering storm. The morning after the Forest Council, Lyra had confronted Kale before the entire pack. "You pledged us to this alliance without consulting me," she'd said, her voice carrying across the main hall, "without consulting any of us. Time is short, and the threat is real," Kale replied firmly. "I made the decision I believed necessary for our survival, based on the word of a woman who has every reason to seek your downfall." Lyra stepped closer, lowering her voice. "She was nothing when she left here, a defective girl who couldn't shift. Now she returns as some forest queen?" The murmurs rippling through the hall suggested many shared her suspicion, but Elder Greta pushed through the crowd, her thin face animated with fear. "I was wrong," the old woman announced. "About the girl, about everything. Last night I dreamed of the Hollow Walkers, visions sent by the moon goddess herself." Her hands trembled. "I saw them coming. I saw what they did to the Riverbend pack. I saw what awaits us if we don't stand with the forest." Her words shifted the tide. If even Greta, who had led the charge to reject Alara 5 years ago, now believed in both the threat and the alliance, others found it harder to maintain their skepticism. Still, in the days that followed, Kale felt the challenge to his authority growing. Whispers in corners, conversations that stopped when he approached, warriors who seemed to look to Lyra for confirmation before following his orders. His Luna made no overt move against him, but he sensed her gathering support for the trials that would determine leadership. The night before the blood moon, Kale stood in his private chambers when his sister Lena entered, carrying an ancient pack record. "I've been researching the blood moon trials," she said, opening the book to a marked page. "The ancient customs that will determine leadership. And I don't think Lyra can win." Lena's finger traced over a line of faded text. The trials test not just strength or fighting prowess, but something deeper, the connection between Alpha and Luna, their bond with the land itself. Kyle frowned. What does that mean? It means if you intend to lead the unified Pax, you may need a different Luna at your side. That's impossible. Lyra and I are mated under Pack law. It cannot be undone except by death. There's another way, Lena replied. A ritual of severance, performed during the blood moon itself. Painful, dangerous, but possible. Even if such a thing exists, why would I consider it? Lyra has been a capable Luna. Has she? Lena's voice softened. Our numbers have dwindled, Kale. Pups are born human more often, many never finding their wolves. These aren't signs of prosperity. Kyle wanted to defend his choices but couldn't deny the truth in her words. Something had been wrong in the Pack for years. A subtle wrongness he had attributed to natural cycles. And you think this is because of my bond with Lyra? I think the mate the moon goddess intended for you walks the Darkwood now. And I think deep down you know it too. Kyle turned away, unable to meet his sister's knowing gaze. The accusation struck too close to the hollow ache he'd carried for 5 years. The sense of something essential missing. It doesn't matter, he said finally. Even if what you say is true, Ilariel has made it clear she wants nothing to do with me beyond this alliance. Maybe. But tomorrow night, when the blood moon rises and the trials begin, you will need to choose. Not just between potential Lunas, but between the past you've built and the future that might save us all. The great clearing beyond the western edge of the Darkwood had been transformed. 7 massive bonfires marked the boundary of the ritual space, each representing one of the Pack territories. At the center stood an altar of rough-hewn stone, ancient symbols carved into its surface glowing faintly. Thousands of wolves from across the territories had assembled, keeping to their Pack groupings, but eyeing one another with cautious curiosity. All 7 alphas had come, even the 3 who had initially rejected the alliance, driven by the same visions that had convinced Elder Greta. Lyra appeared at Kale's side, resplendent in ceremonial garments of deep blue embroidered with the Blacklaw sigil. Quite the spectacle, she murmured, surveying the gathering. I count at least 50 forest dwellers among the crowd, watching us, no doubt. They're as much a part of this alliance as we are, Kale reminded her. A hush fell over the clearing as a procession emerged from the Darkwood. Ilariel led them, her white fur cloak billowing despite the still air. Behind her came dozens of figures, some human in appearance, others with antlers growing from their brows, skin textured like bark, or eyes that reflected light like nocturnal predators. The crowd parted as the forest delegation approached the stone altar. Ilariel ascended the 3 steps, turning to face the assembled Packs with Morna and Caney beside her. The blood moon rises, she called, her voice carrying effortlessly. Tonight, we stand united against a common enemy. Tonight, we determine who shall lead us into the coming darkness. She raised her arms, and the moon began to crest the horizon, larger than it should have been, its surface tinged with deep crimson that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The trials begin with the calling. Each alpha and their Luna must step forward to be judged by the land itself. A murmur rippled through the crowd. This was not how leadership challenges traditionally occurred in Pack society. What does that mean, judged by the land? Called Alpha Soren of the Ashclaw Pack. It means, Morna replied with a hint of amusement, that the earth, the trees, the very stones beneath your feet will determine if you are worthy to lead in the time of shadows. Step forward, alphas, with your Lunas. Form a circle around the altar. The 7 pairs moved forward, forming a rough circle at the base of the altar. Ilariel stepped down, producing a knife of strange, dark stone. Blood calls to blood, she intoned, slicing her palm. Crimson droplets fell to the earth. Heart calls to heart. Wolf calls to wolf. She moved to each pair in turn, offering the knife. A drop of blood from Alpha and Luna, freely given, to bind your fate to the land's judgment. When she reached Kyle and Lyra, she paused, her green eyes meeting his for a fleeting moment. Freely given, she repeated, her voice lower. Kyle took the knife without hesitation, making a small cut across his palm. Lyra did the same, though her movements were stiffer. Their blood joined the others on the earth, absorbed by the soil instantly. Now, Ilariel said, her voice resonating with power, let the land speak. At first, nothing happened. Then Cale felt a tremor beneath his feet, a vibration that traveled up through his body and settled near his heart. Around the circle, the other alphas and their mates showed similar reactions. The vibration grew stronger, the earth pulsing in time with the blood-red moon overhead. Then, at Alpha Soren's feet, the ground began to sink, forming a shallow depression that spread until he and his Luna stood in a pit nearly ankle-deep. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice sharp with fear. "The land's judgment," Morna replied calmly. "It finds you wanting." Similar depressions formed beneath two other pairs, including Old Thorn and his timid Luna. But where Cale stood with Lyra, the ground remained level, though a sensation of coldness spread upward, a chill that made his wolf recoil and caused Lyra to step away from him. "Interesting," Ilariel murmured. "The land recognizes your strength, Alpha Blackclaw, but finds discord in your pairing." Only Regina and her mate stood on ground that remained completely unchanged, neither sinking nor growing cold. The soil around them had even sprouted tiny green shoots. "The first trial is complete," Ilariel announced. 3 pairs have been found wanting by the land itself." "This is trickery," Soren protested. "Some forest magic to manipulate the outcome." "Is it?" Ilariel asked mildly. "Or is it truth your wolf already knows?" She gestured toward his pack, where several members had involuntarily stepped back from their alpha. Regina stepped forward. "What of those of us who remain? Myself and Marrow, whose ground remained steady, and Blackclaw, whose situation seems complex. The second trial tests the bond between Alpha and Luna directly," Ilariel answered. "The bonding fire will reveal what truly lies between you." The central bonfire flared higher, its flames shifting to deep crimson. "Step into the fire," Caney instructed. "If your bond is true, you will emerge unharmed." "You expect us to walk into fire?" Marrow's Luna demanded incredulously. "It will not burn true bonds," Morna assured her, "but it will burn away falsehood. Bonds formed for convenience rather than by the moon goddess's will." Kyle felt Lyra stiffen beside him. Their bond had been convenient, political, advantageous. They respected each other but lacked the soul connection legends spoke of. "I'll go first," Regina said, taking her mate's hand. Together they approached the crimson flames and stepped through, emerging unharmed on the other side. Marrow and his Luna followed, also passing through safely, though the flames seemed reluctant to release them. Then it was Cale's turn. He looked at Lyra, seeing in her eyes the same knowledge that had settled in his heart. They would not pass unscathed. "We don't have to do this," he said quietly. "We can withdraw." "And concede leadership to Regina?" "Never." Lyra's eyes hardened with resolve. "We go together. Whatever comes after, we'll face that too." They approached the fire hand in hand. The moment they entered the crimson blaze, pain engulfed Cale, searing through every nerve. He heard Lyra scream as the fire pushed between them, separating them with brutal force. She was thrust from the flames on the same side they had entered, her skin red and blistered. But for Cale, the flames closed tighter, surrounding him in a cocoon of burning crimson. The pain focused on his chest, where the mating bond with Lyra resided, as though the fire was trying to burn something out of him. Just when he thought he could endure no more, a hand reached through the flames. Cool fingers wrapped around his wrist, pulling with surprising strength. Ilariel's face appeared, her expression fierce with concentration, her cloak untouched by the fire. "Choose," she commanded, her voice cutting through his agony. "Choose now, Alpha, or the fire will consume you both." "Both?" he gasped. "The bond that should be, and the bond that is. One must burn for the other to exist. Choose." In that moment, Cale understood. The mating bond with Lyra had never fully formed, because another bond already existed, a bond that had begun the day a shy, scentless girl joined his pack, a bond he had rejected out of pride and ambition. "Ilara," he whispered, "I choose you. I should have chosen you then. I choose you now." The fire roared and something snapped inside him. The bond with Lyra, severed. Ilariel pulled him from the flames, both tumbling to the ground beyond the fire's reach. "Breathe," she instructed, her voice gentler than he had heard since her return. The clearing had erupted into chaos. Lyra was on her knees nearby, surrounded by healers. Her eyes, when they met his, held a strange, hollow relief, as if a burden had been lifted from her as well. "What have you done?" Regina demanded, striding toward them. What the moon goddess ordained, Morna replied. A false bond broken, a true bond acknowledged. This changes nothing about the trials, Ilariel said firmly. 3 candidates remain for leadership. No, came Marrow's voice. We withdraw our claim. He inclined his head toward Regina, then Cale and Ilariel. What we witnessed here tonight, the Silver Lake Pack and the Black Claw Pack both possess stronger connections to the land than we do. Then it comes to this, Regina said. Silver Lake against Black Claw, as it has always been. But before anyone could respond, a scream tore through the night. A wolf from Regina's pack staggered forward, blood streaming from a wound in his side. They're here, he gasped. The shadows, darkness detached itself from the trees at the clearing's edge, shapes that were almost wolf-like but wrong, eyes gleaming with hungry light. The Hollow Walkers had found them. Chaos erupted. Wolves shifted forms, but claws passed through the creatures harmlessly, darkness reforming as if untouched. Fire! Ilariel shouted. They fear the flame. Drive them toward the bonfires. The forest dwellers grabbed burning branches, charging toward the shadows. Where flame touched darkness, the Hollow Walkers recoiled. Kyle shifted to his massive black wolf form, leading warriors toward the largest concentration of shadows alongside Regina. But for each creature they pushed back, 2 more emerged from the darkness. There are too many, Brennan called, fighting to Cale's side. A piercing howl cut through the battle, not of pain or fear, but a summoning. Atop the stone altar stood Ilariel, beginning to shift. The transformation was unlike anything Cale had witnessed. The ground trembled, the blood moon pulsing in time with the change flowing over her body. What emerged was a wolf larger even than Cale, with fur white as fresh snow that seemed to emit its own light. Her eyes, still green but ringed with gold, surveyed the battlefield with ancient intelligence. The white wolf howled again, a sound that vibrated in Cale's bones, calling to something primal within him. Stand with me, her voice whispered in their minds. Stand together, or fall divided. Choose. Kyle bounded toward the altar, leaping up beside her. His howl joined hers, deeper, resonant, completing her call. Regina followed, then Marrow, then the other alphas. Their howls merged into a unified challenge against the darkness. The Hollow Walkers hesitated, withdrawing slightly. Ilariel sprang from the altar, a streak of white lightning cutting through the shadows. Where her teeth found purchase, the creatures dissolved like smoke. Cale followed, driving shadows toward the bonfires where they could be destroyed. The tide turned as pack wolves and forest dwellers fought side by side. Throughout the battle, the white wolf and the black worked in perfect synchronicity, as if they had fought together all their lives, as if 5 years of separation had never happened. When the last Hollow Walker had been driven back or destroyed, Ilariel and Cale stood together at the center of the clearing, bloodied but victorious. The remaining wolves gathered in a circle, watching expectantly. Ilariel shifted back to human form, her white cloak somehow intact. The enemy has shown itself, she said. This was but a scouting party. More will come as the blood moon waxes full. We drove them back tonight because we stood together, Kyle added. Pack and forest, united despite our differences. Regina stepped forward, shifting to human form. For a moment, Kyle tensed, anticipating challenge, but the Silver Lake Alpha dropped to one knee. I witnessed something tonight I never thought to see, she said. True mates, reunited despite betrayal, fighting as one against the darkness. Silver Lake recognizes your leadership, Alpha Black Claw, Luna Ilariel. One by one, the other alphas followed suit, even proud old Thorn, grumbling but bending his knee. The gathered wolves, seeing their leaders submit, lowered their heads in acknowledgement. Cale felt not the heady rush of dominance he had expected, but something deeper, a sense of rightness, as if pieces long misaligned had finally settled into place. Rise, Ilariel commanded softly. Tonight, we fought as equals, and so shall we continue. The unified packs need all your strength if we are to survive what comes. She turned to Cale, something vulnerable briefly flickering in her eyes. We have much to discuss, Alpha Black Claw, but not here, not now. When? He asked simply. When the moon sets, she replied. Come to the edge of the dark wood, where you first saw me return. Come alone. The moon had nearly set when Cale reached the appointed meeting place. Ilariel waited at the tree line, wearing a simple green dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger this way, more like the girl he had known, though the power she had gained in the forest still radiated from her. "You came," she said. "Did you doubt I would?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "No. Whatever else has changed between us, your word has always been true, even when it hurt. The packs have accepted our leadership," Kale said, changing the subject. "Even Lyra has acknowledged you as Luna." "For now," Ilariel replied. "Necessity makes for strange alliances. Is that what this is between us? An alliance of necessity?" Her eyes flashed. "What would you have it be, Kyle? The fire severed your bond with Lyra, but that doesn't erase 5 years of pain." "No," he agreed quietly. "Nothing can change the past. I was cruel, proud, and blind. I betrayed not just you, but myself." Ilariel's expression remained guarded, but her posture softened slightly. "Why did you choose me in the fire? You could have fought for your bond with Lyra." Kale stepped closer, close enough to catch her scent, wildflowers and loam, the forest mixed with something uniquely Alara beneath, "because it was never truly broken," he said. "Damaged, yes, but even in the fire, I could feel the connection the moon goddess forged between us when we were children. A connection you ignored," she reminded him, though with less bite. "To my eternal shame," he acknowledged. "But tonight, in the battle, when we fought side by side, did you not feel it too? The rightness of it? As if we were two halves finally aligned?" Ilariel turned away, her gaze fixed on the darkwood. "The forest changed me, Kale. I'm not the girl who fled into the trees 5 years ago. I know. You're stronger now. The forest gave you what I should have. Acceptance without condition. Faith in your worth. It gave me more than that," she replied, turning to face him. "It gave me purpose. The forest spoke to me that first night, when I had nothing left to lose. It saw in me what no one else had. Not a defect, but a different kind of power. The voice of the Darkwood," Kale murmured, understanding dawning. "Guardian of the ancient pact." Ilariel nodded. "The last guardian died decades ago. The forest had been waiting for someone to replace her. Someone who could bridge the gap between pack and forest. Someone who understood rejection. Someone like you," Kale said softly. "Someone exactly like me." For the first time, real warmth entered her voice. "In the heart of the Darkwood, I found what I had always sought. Belonging, purpose, power that was mine alone." Kyle understood more fully now the transformation she had undergone. Not just a wolf finding her power, but a guardian coming into her inheritance. "And now?" he asked. "Now that the packs and the forest must stand together, now that we have been chosen to lead, what becomes of us?" "That depends," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. 5 years ago, you chose what you believed was strength over what you saw as weakness. You chose the mate who could shift over the girl who couldn't. You chose what was expected of you over what the moon goddess intended." "I did," Kale admitted, "and I've regretted it every day since." "Words," Ilariel said, though without malice. "Just words. Then let me show you." Kale took another step closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head to maintain eye contact. "The unified packs need both of us. Your connection to the forest. My authority with the wolves. We could lead side by side out of necessity alone." He took a breath, steeling himself for what came next. "But I'm asking for more. I'm asking for what should have been 5 years ago. Not out of duty or necessity or even to right past wrongs, but because I love you. I loved you then, though I was too proud to admit it. I love you now, changed as we both are." Ilariel's composure finally cracked, a single tear trailing down her cheek. "How do I know you won't choose something else over me again? Power, convenience, tradition. Because I've lived that choice," Kale said simply. "I know its hollowness, its cost, and because I've seen what you've become without me. Stronger, more powerful than I could have imagined. You don't need me anymore, Alara, but I need you, not just as Luna, but as mate, as equal, as the other half of my soul." He held out his hand, palm up, offering rather than claiming. "I cannot undo the past, but I can promise you a future where I never forget its lessons." For a long moment, she stood motionless, staring at his outstretched hand. The eastern sky began to lighten with the first hint of dawn, the blood moon finally slipping below the horizon. Then, slowly, Ilariel placed her hand in his. We start anew, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Not as we were, but as we are now. Not Alpha and Luna, but equals. Partners against the darkness. And perhaps, in time, mates in truth as well as name. Cale nodded, a weight lifting from his chest that he'd carried for 5 years. Partners, he agreed. As the sun crested the horizon, casting golden light across the boundary between forest and packlands, the white wolf and the black stood side by side, no longer divided by pride or tradition or the mistakes of the past, but united in purpose, in power, and in the beginnings of something that might, with time and trust, bloom again into love. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.